In a haze thick like watery mud, I was shaken awake. A hand touched my forehead. My eyes opened slowly, my head heavy like lead, my gaze lost in the dimly lit room. I don't know why, but lately every sleep has felt like falling into a bottomless void. My mind slips away, weightless, and when I wake I'm completely drained. The candle had long since gone out. Only the fireplace glowed faintly, and the aging bulb above breathed out a dying, flickering light. The boatmaker and Professor Vane were both there. Vane suggested I wash up, get presentable, and come with them to the village. The boatmaker would help me, make peace with the locals. I glanced out the window. The sky was still pitch black. Rain tapped the roof like fingernails on wood. The idea of going down to the village now seemed ridiculous. The cliffside paths, one slip, and I'd be a corpse tangled in seaweed. I considered eating a can of fish, but the boatmaker had already set out 3 plates of fried eggs. Not bad. While we ate, she told us that a few weeks ago, a yacht had stopped by, carrying a group of curious tourists. It should have been uneventful. The villagers usually welcomed outsiders politely, but this time something went wrong. Some of them broke the rules. They were chased out and eventually left for the southern island. The boatmaker said, that's why I was attacked. She would help explain, but anything about interviews, I was on my own. The idea of seeing the sunrise was pointless now. Thick black clouds smothered the sky, not a sliver of light in sight. I put on a raincoat and stepped out in silence. I looked to the horizon, only to see a massive wall of grey pressing down on the sea. As we walked, the boatmaker led the way, silent and firm. Professor Vane followed slowly, as if carrying a graveyard on his back. We kept stopping, waiting for him to catch up. During one of the pauses, I struck up conversation to kill time. Turns out Vane was born here, but left the island when he was very young. He'd only just returned a week ago. I nodded. No wonder the boatmaker seemed so tense. Imagine a long-lost brother suddenly showing up after decades. Who wouldn't be suspicious? Then again, the boatmaker is strange. Who lives alone on a mountain? And there's more. Vane told me this island chain is just the remnants of an ancient sea kingdom, one that was drowned long ago. Of course, I immediately thought of Atlantis. But isn't it true that archaeologists only recognize civilizations from about 4000 BCE onward? Professor Vane chuckled. He didn't answer directly. Instead, he looked out toward the sea and said, "That's true, but they write history based only on what survives. There are structures built when humans still wore fur and lived in caves, yet the engineering and scale far exceed their time. Those are the cracks in what they call science." He mentioned Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, Sacsayhuaman in Peru, and the massive stones of Baalbek in Lebanon, where blocks weighing hundreds of tons were cut and stacked before the invention of the wheel. So who can pound their chest and claim there was never a lost civilization before this? Who dares say, history has no missing pages? I scratched my head. I understood part of it, but couldn't quite keep up. Still, one thing was certain. If this island truly held remnants of an undiscovered civilization, it would be a news bomb. Tomorrow, when I get back to Hawaii, I'll contact the newsroom. They'll definitely approve a budget for me to return, this time as a special correspondent. Becoming a millionaire might be a stretch, but a juicy paycheck and a boost to my reputation could open doors to bigger publications. A bright future was waiting. The rain grew heavier. From the edge of the hill, I saw the village again, this time like it was veiled in a shroud. The air was somber, damp, and stranger than the first time I arrived. The moment we entered the village, I could feel the crisscrossing stares. Some were hostile, but others held a strange mix of reverence and caution. I quickly realized it was because of the boatmaker's presence. She said nothing, just motioned for me to follow. We headed toward a large house in the village center, built from black stone, rotting wood, and pillars thick as ancient tree trunks. It felt more like a standing tomb than a place of living. In front of the house, I saw the same group of young men from yesterday. They still held their fishing spears, but this time they didn't move. Their expressions weren't angry, more like they were trying to figure out what I was. I paused at the steps while the boatmaker moved forward. From inside, I heard a heated discussion, quiet but sharp. I couldn't catch every word, but I gathered it had something to do with food supplies. Strange. The old boatman said the waters around this island were always full of fish year-round. So then, why? The boatmaker said one sentence, not loud but firm. I want to speak to the village chief. The young men glanced at each other. None of them spoke. Then slowly, one by one, they stepped aside, as if clearing a path that wasn't meant for me. As I crossed the threshold, I bumped into a string of hanging seashells, some kind of talisman. They clinked together with a sharp sound that sent a chill down my spine, as if announcing my presence to the whole room. The space inside was wide, but strangely empty. The ceiling was high, its beams dark with age. Smoke from a sunken floor hearth curled upward, cloaking the room in a haze that smelled of damp kelp and ancient rot. At the centre stood a large stone table, cracked and mossy. Scattered across it were objects from the deep sea, giant fish bones, clam shells, coral fragments, crab claws, and other things I wasn't sure were real. They were arranged in spirals, like part of a ritual I couldn't begin to understand. Seated in a loose circle were over a dozen people. Some were so old their skin looked like sun-dried squid. Others were middle-aged men, faces stone-cold, eyes cloudy, heads bowed but ears still sharp. The youngest among them, none other than the man in the life vest I had knocked down yesterday. His eyes met mine, calm, not angry. It seemed he was worried about something else. The person seated at the highest point was likely the village chief. He sat there, hunched like dried seaweed, his eyes clouded like frost covering a relic from another age. He breathed in little and out too much, each exhale a frail, hollow sigh, as if clinging to a rhythm of life that no longer belonged to him. Unlike the two elders I had met, this man seemed almost decomposed, yet he remained seated atop a moss-covered slab of stone, like the forgotten throne of a forsaken king. Suddenly, he lifted his head and stared straight at me. His gaze was dim but pierced through skin and bone, and he spoke. The wind and the waves have brought two outsiders, one a traitor and one without a name. No one in the circle moved, but I could feel the whole room tighten by a heartbeat, a hush, a few furrowed brows, and then all eyes turned toward me. Before I could react, Professor Vane stepped in through the rear door. He didn't look at me. He faced the village chief, his gaze sweeping quietly across the stone walls. That's when I noticed. The ancestral house was built from heavy, square slabs, carved with spirals, scales, fish eyes, and winding symbols in faded red ink. Not drawings, not writing. Warnings, or reminders. Vane chuckled, a sound unclear if mocking or mournful. Moru, never thought you'd become the chief. Another elder woman rose abruptly from a stone seat. She held a black wooden staff, its head tied with wet feathers and a broken shell. She pointed it straight at Vane, voice rasping like a storm over coral. Why have you come back, traitor? You abandoned your duty, the legacy your bloodline was sworn to uphold. Vane didn't flinch. He met her glare. His smile now wasn't sarcastic, but tired, worn from too many years of silence. Duty? Legacy? Because of those very things, my family withered away alongside you, and most of all, that legacy was fulfilled by my father long ago. He turned to Moru, his eyes dry, hard as sand. Moru, you understand me better than anyone here. No one in this room cares more for this village's future than I do. Do you know what I've seen in the decades I've spent out there? What you feared to imagine, I've seen. What you never understood, I've grasped. And what you could never do, I've found a way. No one answered. Only the faint crackle from the fire pit remained. Vane's voice sank, colder now. If you want, throw me into the sea. But know this, your children and theirs will remain shackled to this rotting island. And when the tide touches the moon, this village's end will make the southern fools look fortunate. Silence wrapped the ancestral house for several long minutes. The one who finally spoke was the young man in the life vest. Duty and legacy can wait. Father, the livestock and crops were buried by the landslide. Our food stores will last a week at most. That's the real problem. And with that, the air in the ancestral house grew even heavier. The boatmaker spoke, as if she had prepared these words long ago. First, send people to the landslide. Collect anything that's still intact. Don't let the villagers know. Then clear the shoreline around the village. Tonight, I'll head for the northern extremes. As for Vane, she pulled a small handgun from her sleeve. He'll be under my watch. The elders exchanged glances. Moru paused for a few seconds, then nodded. Everyone quietly dispersed, each to their assigned task. I looked around and realized it was just me and Moru now. Not sure if I'd messed up the script or walked into a cultural documentary. Moru looked at me, not harsh but heavy, like stone. "I've heard about you. A bit late, but welcome to the village. Still, you can see, this place isn't some tourist spot. Outsiders like you shouldn't get involved in what happens here." Clear enough. A polite way to show me the door. But I was broke. Return to Hawaii now? I'd need to scrub docks for a month to afford the ticket. A golden opportunity lay ahead, and I wasn't the type to back off easily. I scanned the surroundings, trying to come up with something that sounded halfway useful, but at that moment, my brain was a blank slate. Well, I think I could help. Maybe some manual labor. I flexed my arm with a confident, albeit awkward smile. Moru was silent for a while, then nodded. "Welcome to the village." I really just wanted to snap some photos of the ancestral house walls, but the village chief just sat there, unmoving like a stone relic. Left with no choice, I stepped out, planning to find Professor Vane, when I saw the guy in the life vest talking to a woman. Then, without warning, he sprinted away. Curiosity piqued, I quietly followed him. He darted into the forest. The house he left behind was better built than most. Solid walls, no leaks, door wide open. I peeked inside. Nothing strange. Dried meat hanging from hooks, bundles of fruit, fishing spears. By the hearth, a woman was cradling a child, a boy, maybe 3 or 4. Her face etched with worry. The boy, skin flushed, rapid breathing, wheezing, cracked lips, barely conscious, fever, and not the mild kind. The woman, startled when she saw me, stood quickly and reached for the door. I hesitated, then asked, "I think he has a high fever. It could be dangerous if left untreated. Is there a clinic nearby?" Only after speaking did I realize how dumb the question was. The place barely had electricity, so I shifted my approach. "What do people normally use for fever here?" The woman froze, clearly reluctant to answer. I glanced around and added, "If you're using local herbs, they might not work. I heard the herbal fields were buried in the landslide." Her eyes widened. Something clicked. Maybe that's why her husband had run off. "Is there anyone else in the village with medicine? You might want to ask." She finally spoke, voice trembling. "There isn't. We just had a flu outbreak. Everything was used up." I stayed quiet for a few seconds, then pulled a strip of Tylenol from my backpack. "Antipyretics. Mild ones should keep it under control." She looked at me, suspicious. With no better option, I broke off a tablet, popped it into my mouth and swallowed it in front of her. Silence. After a moment, she cautiously followed suit, taking one herself, then giving another to her son. We sat quietly, watching the boy. His breathing eased. Then he drifted into sleep. Sweat glistened on his brow, his face no longer tense. I exhaled deeply. After observing for half an hour with no signs of trouble, I left the house, my backpack a bit heavier with some dried fruits in return. I headed for the shoreline. The group of youths, along with others, were piling up a mass of coral, seaweed, and dead fish and pouring oil on it. I had arrived late, missing the details, but from what I could see, it reminded me of what I saw the day I arrived. Fish covered in dark seaweed, but these were massive, some the size of grown adults, fins sprouting extra limbs, fingers, eyes placed behind the skull. I thought I was seeing things. Stepped closer, and the flames leapt up, forcing me back like a warning. I swallowed hard. Clearly, I'd missed something important. No one spoke, but the air was crushing. I said nothing, just followed. 10 minutes later, we arrived at a small harbour, crescent-shaped as if carved by nature itself. There were 3 old mid-sized fishing boats, likely passed down for generations. The hulls were covered in strange symbols, like branches, lightning bolts, or fractured bones. All of them were mounted with harpoon guns. Whale hunting, or something bigger than whales. From a house near the docks, the boatmaker, Professor Vane, and several elders emerged. They carried brown crates, painting sigils onto the boats. Everyone rest. We sail when the moon rises. I looked up. The sky was dark, clouds heavy, rain still falling. What moon? I moved to ask Vane, but he looked at me, then at the boatmaker and the elders, and shook his head. Not now. The whole village stirred into motion. Spears, blades, oil, pulleys, all loaded aboard. Was this a hunt, or a war against something from the sea? I stepped up to help, only to be gently pushed aside. So I wandered, tracing the carvings along the hulls, and found a place to rest. When I woke from a short nap, the villagers were lighting torches, starting the engines. Floodlights illuminated the harbour. The rain had stopped, clouds parted, and the moon, full, glowing, so large it looked as if it might crash into the ocean. Under the Elder's orders, I was assigned to the boat with the boatmaker and Professor Vane. At the time, I had no idea that this journey would carve itself into my memory until the day I die.